as required.
Okay.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. We are here. We're a couple of minutes early, but Chip's a busy man and he's got things to do. And speaking of things to do, what are you doing, Chip, other than drinking your water?
Well, we're in Orange County, California today, and yeah, we're preparing a Silent Arrow. This is the fuselage, which is also the shipping case, and the wings go inside and then flip up the other way and then spring open. So I had to broadcast today from the shop because this is getting shipped out to the Middle East on Thursday. So we're running around trying to piece it all together and get it ready. We haven't even painted Silent Arrow on the side yet.
So what do you do when it gets? Oh, actually, what we need to do, don't forget to look out for Chip's wife's special word, because he is primed and programmed to get a word into the conversation. So we've got to guess what the word is. Don't forget, kids, play along at home. But anyway, so we'll look for that word now, Chip. So when it gets into theatre, obviously that's got to. Is it your team that will fly there with it and get it into service, or how does that work?
Yeah, this one's going. It's going to New York, and then it's going to go overseas to the Middle East, and we will follow it shortly and do a little training session with this particular customer. Yeah, make sure it all goes together. It comes with instructions, but
and for those of you that don't know, that have already started viewing it, even we have started a bit early because Chip's busy. Chip's made one of the most inefficient gliders ugly and inefficient gliders in the world. But no, it's quite a cool thing. Swing wing, isn't it? It's a box swing wings. And what sort of cargo are you dropping these days, Chip? What sort of weight?
Yeah, 1,600 pounds. So it's a 2,000-pound glider gross weight, and 1,600. It's 1,630 pounds is the cargo, and we've certified that to 2.5 Gs. So 2,000 pounds times 2.5 is the load limit that the wings can take. So it's quite robust, but you wouldn't want to fly it around in a thunderstorm or anything like that. It's not aerobatic.
Sure, there's so many reasons to get you back on. I've forgotten them all now. I know one thing I've seen is a lot of people have been saying, well, how's that thing any better than a parachute? Why can't we just use a parachute instead of that thing? So maybe you could respond to that, and I'll get back to them with it.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I hate to say it, this wasn't our idea. We got approached by the U.S. Marine Corps in late 2014, and they have the parachute, right? So they have a GPS-guided parachute. It's known as JPADS. It's Joint Precision Airdrop something, and so it's pretty good, but it's twice the price of Silent Arrow, and it's not an airplane, right? So it's going down. Its best glide ratio is just over 3 to 1, and it hits the ground hard, right? So if you're in a parachute, if you ever go parachuting, they tell you, tuck and roll so you don't break your legs. Well, your pallet of goods is going to hit the ground very hard. And it can only overcome so much crosswind. So the Marines came to us and said, we want something better than the parachute. It's steerable. It's a real airplane. They can come in and do a nice full stall landing that costs half as much or even less is good, and has a smooth landing to preserve the cargo. So based on that, we came up with Silent Arrow.
Okay, someone's just asking the comment, what was the drone in the image? And that's it. It's Silent Arrow behind the Chip right now. Cargo delivery system. And that is the elegant aerodynamic fuselage right next to it.
It's so embarrassing. Yeah. We were in London.
It works.
Yeah, it does work. It glides at 8.4 to 1 right now, and we're making improvements. So I mean, that's as good as my Piper Cherokee. And this is it's made out of plywood and aluminum, and it's square because the wings all go inside, and the boxes they're shipping are square, and so obviously round or in a lip shape. I mean, there's a million things that would be better than this, but to do this exact job, it only has to fly for 15 minutes. So that's what we joke about. It can't look like an airplane, or it's going to be too expensive, right? So it really is, aluminum and plywood, and you throw it out of a C-130 at 25,000 feet. The 4 wings spring open. It glides beautifully for 15 minutes, does a nice landing, and then it's trash. So
does that, if you're allowed to say it, does that 15 minutes include a couple of orbits for it to set up an approach, or is it straight in?
yeah, it is designed to barber pole, so it's got an energy management system. So obviously, if we had a headwind that we didn't expect, it could come up short. So the idea in the software is that it gets there a little early, it gets there a little high, and yeah, we come in. The controller. We're writing software right now for a controller, so a guy can use a wand. It's called an ATAC controller, and say it's an Android controller, and say,
Yeah.
here's the runway. It's a dirt road or it's the desert, and the wind is this way, and there's a tree here, so here's the barber pole, and then it comes out at the last turn and does the flare.
Of course, you can already do that in Archipilot. Sorry, you going there, Ian?
Yeah, I was just going to say. So when you say it's trash, so I'm assuming the autopilot and everything is recovered after that point to be able to be used again, or when it lands. What state is this in once it's hit ground zero?
Yeah. We've had some good landings and some bad landings, but the cargo always survives.
Yeah.
Don't tell Philip. But we're using Philip's Pixhawk Cube, right, from Profi. So you don't need to recover it, right? It's not a recover. It's not a go find it, right? It's a couple $100, and it hits the ground, and it really, you don't have to recover the autopilot, right? It's not expensive. It's not ITAR controlled. Anybody can buy it from Amazon. So the challenge here was, how do you design an airplane that works with off-the-shelf stuff that's not government quality, that's not export controlled?
And the idea is just to be able to get a payload on the ground in a somewhat safe manner, and not have to worry about recovery of the vehicle afterwards.
Exactly. What's funny is we just signed a contract with the Air Force, and we're telling them about our soft landings, and they said, well, we'd like the landings to be harder but more accurate. So the whole first 2 feet of Silent Arrow is impact foam, and then they put their valuable cargo, and we're programming in a slider, so you can say, it's smooth landing versus accurate landing, and and so you got a guy who's up on a ridge, and he's out of ammunition, and you say, I want it to just hit the ridge, but land right next to him, and or you say, I've got some humanitarian aid for a village in Africa. We definitely want to do a nice smooth landing away from the village, and have it be very controlled. But it was funny to hear the Air Force say, we want you to smash it into the ground. But
it's interesting. It was interesting that said, and just responding to For Johnny Bravo, the one in the image is behind. It's behind Chip now. It's the box behind Chip. It's that box.
Yeah,
that is it.
I wish I had a picture of it, to show the wings. The wings are in the other room, but yeah, it's a 2 foot by 2 foot by 8 foot box, and it's got 4 wings that are shipped upside down inside of it, and attached to the lid, which is missing. There's no lid on this. And so when you get to where you're going, you lift the lid off, and all 4 wings are attached to the lid, and then you set them down on the ground, and then you fill this box up with stuff and put the lid on the other way around.
Oh, wow.
Those wings spring open. Yeah, it's, if you Google Silent Arrow, you're going to find an underwear pants, underwears and bras.
Really?
You really will. It's Australian bra company. So don't Google Silent Arrow. Don't do it. Google Silent Arrow UAV or something. Okay.
That's very clever. So as you say, it comes in that. So the wings are inside it. You turn it over, and then. So how do they open when it comes out the aircraft?
Yeah, so there's a static line. We've been using a helicopter. We've been using a Huey, and sometimes when we're doing some flight tests, we'll start with the wings already open and locked. So we pick it up, and it looks like an airplane, and we'll carry it over and release it, and we're testing for stall conditions or center of gravity or something. But the way it's meant to be used is from 25,000 feet, and when the wings are open, it's too wide to fit in a cargo airplane. So it's a Swiss Army knife. We like to say that the mother was a Swiss Army knife and the father was a coffin. The 4 wings, there's a static line. You push it out backwards, and the static line pulls 4 pins, and the 4 wings spring open, and then they lock, and that's it. Once they're locked open, they're open, and it's flying.
And you're flying. Go on.
So I was going to say, whilst I'm going to understand you can't put figures on things, what sort of does it cost to land something on the ground in this manner that, you're not having to worry about recovering the vehicle? Obviously this is for situations where putting people on the ground might not be possible, might not be safe, but I'm assuming that there is a cost involved, obviously. But are we talking tens of thousands, or, where are we at with that?
Yeah, I mean, our price target, if you're buying a lot of them, it's $15,000 US. If you came and bought one, it'd be more like 30 grand.
Yeah.
And have you tested it with soldier loaded loads, i.e. all at the back or all at the front, or how sort of resilient is it to center of gravity?
Yeah, it is very sensitive to center of gravity. That's one of the, I don't want to say downsides, but it's something you have to be aware of. And so we paint an arrow on the side of Silent Arrow. It's just forward of the middle. And so with that arrow is the center of gravity of the aft limit. So to keep it simple for soldiers, and not making any commentary on soldiers, but they just put a board on the ground, and you set Silent Arrow on the board under the arrow, and if it balances or tips forward, you're good. If it tips back, you move items to the front, heavier items. And if you can't balance the load that way, then this front bulkhead is steel, actually. The whole airplane is designed to be light, except this front bulkhead is ballast. It's a steel plate, and each plate is about 1/4 inch thick, and you can add ballast plates to the front up to 2 inches of ballast, which is 200 pounds. So you just start adding ballast to the front until you get in the center of gravity limits. Obviously, your gross weight is higher, but with a 1,600 pound payload, you almost can't use that much. You almost can't load it to get 1,600 pounds in and still be in the center of gravity.
That's it glides like a small windowless building.
we were showing this to a bunch of special forces guys, and there's one guy in the back was wearing like a classic trench coat and like a little funny hat, and he didn't say anything till the very end, and he said, can you put a body in that? And we said, someone you like, or a terrorist? And so I said, who is that guy? And he says, oh, that guy's naval intelligence, which means
well, that's, I mean, a lot of conjecture around that X-37B, that I hope I got that right, but that spaceship that it has the ability to deploy up to 7 blokes to anywhere in the world within a given amount of time. That's one of the things kicking up about it.
Yeah,
that's amazing. So, and how many? Well, I mean, are we allowed to ask how many units are out in the wild now, or roughly?
Yeah, I mean, well, what's funny too is, so we build them for flight testing, and each one, more or less, after each flight is trash. So it's a challenging flight test program. We've probably made 20, and you'll have a great flight and a great landing, but it's like, it's the one wing dug in a little bit, so it's kind of bent. So you take that apart and save the servos and stuff. So there's a bunch of them out there, but again, single use. We're shipping 20 right now, and wow. This unit here that's going to the Middle East is number 5 of the 20 order. So yeah, it's going.
Well, that's fantastic.
It's clearly a market. You wouldn't think there's a market for a disposable aircraft, but it makes complete sense the more you think about it.
Cruise missiles are disposable.
He has to do large ones and small ones, and
He always goes there, doesn't he?
He does. He always goes there. I'm glad Chip didn't hear him. It's just don't listen. No, I'm going to go the other way. Him, don't listen to him. Don't listen to him, Chip. Don't listen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, enough of your day job. What about the electric aeroplane? Where are we at with the electric aeroplane?
Yeah, it's so I just gave a speech for the U.S. Navy in Pax River in Maryland, and it was to the test pilots, and so I thought I can't do my normal Chip Yates crap, so I have to really know my facts and figures. So I buckled down and I looked at the flights. So my record flying this electric airplane is I think it's 28 flights I've done in it, and 4 of them have been dead stick emergency landings, and so that's 14% failure rate. So I was giving them the facts and figures about it, So every time I strap in, I have that in mind now, 14%, and that's not comforting.
Was that a failure, or was that you pushing it too far?
Well, so yeah, of the 4 emergency landings, the first one was me pushing it too far, and I under voltaged the battery pack, and a couple cells opened up, and the pack went offline. The other 3 were in the same sort of category. We were using a prototype motor controller, and we had stuff rattle off. We had some vibration, and so yeah, we had it's a CAN bus, and so we had a surface mount capacitor rattled off the CAN bus. You could hear it in the motor controller rattling around in there. That was dead stick number 2. And then we had a pin come out of an Amphenol connector. That was kind of a freak. Why would that happen? And that was number 3. And yeah, we had an interruption to the low voltage board. So we run 480 volts is our battery pack at 600 amps. And so the motor controller has a step down board to 15 volts that runs the CAN cards and all that stuff. And that 15 volts got interrupted, and we never figured out why. And so UQM built me a production motor controller. We were using a prototype motor controller that I liked it because it was small and light, but UQM hated that I was using it because it was never supposed to be used for this kind of stuff. So they built me a proper one, and that one's flying great. And I flew it in March of this year. And I think I put a video up of the flight, and it was great. I had high gearbox temperature. We have a prop speed reduction unit. So the motor is turning 6,000 RPM, but the propeller only wants to turn 3,000 RPM. So we have a 2-to-1 chain drive, and that oil was a little hot, so we put another cooler. And so the long-winded answer to your question is, I think it's sitting in the hangar at Inyakern ready to fly, and it's more a question of when can I get up there and try these 6 world records. There's 6 we're after, and so it's really just down to me and the time.
I see that Airbus today were touting, yay, they're racing series and 10-minute flights and stuff like that. Yeah. You're going to be a contender for those races when they come around?
No, I'll be a supporter. I'll be cheering from the sidelines. What's funny is the guy running the Air Race E contacted me and said, do you want to be involved or be a race pilot or something? And it turns out he sat behind me in junior high school in Pittsburgh, if you can believe that.
Wow.
Yeah. It's unbelievable, but I support all that 100%. I mean, that's what you have to do to push the limits, and I wish I had the time to do it. I mean, hey, do you want to come to Europe and fly to race an electric airplane? I mean, who would say no to that? But exactly. But wow. We've got the electric long easy, and then we're building a megawatt type airplane, also electric airplane. And so I think I'm tasked down with projects right now.
And can you see an electric version of your Silent Arrow, or is it always going to be absolutely silent and pushed out the back?
No, yeah, we have an electric version. In fact, here in the shop, we have the electric motor and the gear drive for it. And so, yeah, Silent Arrow is becoming electric. It's called the ER2000. It's electric and reusable, whereas the GD is glider and disposable. So that it'll carry 1,150 pounds and have a 150-mile range and take off and land. It's 180 horsepower.
Okay. Oh, so it'll do the whole gig, take off and land. So so runway enabled and all that sort of
exactly
thing.
And if you push it out of a C-130 and the wings spring open, then the electric is just a range extender. So it's just, hey, great, it'll go farther.
Yeah. Wow, exciting stuff. You must, if you need to go, you must go. I don't know how much time we've got with you, so I don't want to force you in, because I'm still looking for your wife's mystery word. Maybe it's already been and gone.
I said bras and panties.
I did wonder if that was in fact. Yes.
I think it was club sandwich.
Was that?
That's the club sandwich.
Well, yeah. So that's Philip's gear behind you, and Mission Planner. That looks like, is it? Am I looking at the laptop?
That's Mission Planner. So Silent Arrow is autonomous, right? So you wouldn't use a hand controller, but for flight testing, we do use a hand controller as a backup. So it's just sitting next to me as I'm flying it. So this is just a Tyrannus Plus. This unit has an immersion RC easy UHF on the back. But we're transitioning, they don't make them anymore, so we're transitioning to RF design. And so on this Tyrannus, this is a beautiful product, by the way. We just got 3 of them in, and so it's a booster that goes on the back of your Tyrannus and just clicks into place there. And so it takes over. The RFD 900 is a great radio. It's our best performing radio. Yeah. And so so now you actually fly the airplane with the RFD 900. And you get the telemetry back, and then it goes over Wi-Fi your laptop. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do some flying in December at Pendleton, Oregon, and we'll be using this new RF design.
Amazing stuff. It's amazing stuff. Well done. I'm amazed that is anybody beginning to copy you, or any coming out of the woodwork now?
I don't think so. Nobody wants to. You know, it was funny. We won this contract from the Marines because no one wanted to do it. You know, it was. If you look at the requirements, it was like we want to be 10 times cheaper than the parachute, glide 10 to 1, carry 500 plus pounds, and be 10 grand or something, and just you can just hear the aerospace companies no bidding that, right, left and right, And
so is that why did you go for it then? Sorry, I interrupted you, Chip. Yeah. But did you go for it then because you thought it was like a pretty impossible task, or did you immediately see that it could be done for the money?
No, I went because it was impossible. Yeah, they came and they said, we heard you're crazy, and can you make anything? And they didn't have an airplane in mind. They just said we need a glide. It could be a helium balloon for all they cared. But they wanted 8 to 1 glide ratio, something like. They wanted a real airplane worth of performance. So, yeah, the very first model I made of this, we made out of trash cans that I bought at Target. It was two little stainless steel trash cans, and we put some wings on it, and we showed them, and they said, "Right, you win. Here's 500,000."
But again, without wishing to divulge any details I wouldn't want to divulge, but they obviously had a distance they needed to go. They knew the glide ratio, and they knew where the Hercules would be standing off and all that sort of thing. They must have had something very much in mind.
Yeah, well, they started at 5 to 1 is what they wanted, 5 to 1 glide ratio, to just beat JPADs a little bit, which was about 3 to 1. And we thought we could do 10 to 1. And so our first brochure said 10 to 1, but once we started flight testing, we're sitting around 8. So I think in a perfect world, you could get 10 to 1 out of something like this, but it's a stretch. It's a stretch goal. So we're working on. We just got a contract for a wide body version of this. We have 2 customers for that, and we're going to use that as kind of an opportunity to say, can we make this a little slicker, a little cleaner, glide a little bit better? Because we're pregnant with this guy right here. This is being produced in the UK and in Serbia, so we're a little stuck with the form factor. And as it's my ugly baby, and every time I look at it, I think, why did I do that? It could have been better. But it's a great airplane. It's the original, and then everything else is going to be some kind of variant of it.
But you'll be chasing diminishing returns, but okay, you can round it out a bit. That'll give you, I don't know, the foot a minute or something like that. But to really hone it, surely it'd be a lot of CFD work. What's the point?
Yeah,
that one works.
Yeah,
the Hercules 1,000 feet higher. That's all.
Yeah, we're in CFD now on the next version. This one went through CFD, and we learned a lot, because it's so square. You see all kinds of separation that you didn't foresee. But we're doing the entire new wide body entirely in CFD. So yeah, you're right. I mean, diminishing returns, of course. I mean, this was a heavy lift getting something that flies at 8 to 1 that's made out of garbage, basically. It was a pretty big task, but. Yeah, I think, and the wide body, they're willing to pay a little bit more because it's a special mission. So, oh wow, maybe it could be round now or something,
Yeah, I don't know, Bruce. What's your thought on? You must have thoughts on that sort of those aerodynamic tweaks to get performance up versus value, time and effort.
I don't think you can beat your mum's wardrobe with a couple of wings on it. I think
exactly. That's right. Yeah, you need to line the witch in the wardrobe on the side.
It is a giant. It's a giant bathtub. It really is. It
works.
It's incredible, and it's incredibly. It's not simple to do, but the idea is incredibly simple, isn't it? It's one of those things. The idea is in a sketch of a bit of paper. Let's have a box with some fold-out wings, and it's going to fly forever. But as you say, the actual delivery of that is a very different animal.
Yeah, we were in London in September at the DSEI show at the Excel Center, and we were kind of unveiling it, right? And so there it sat, and we had a really nice booth. We did it with the Mel Group, who's our manufacturer in Europe, in London, actually, in Sudbury, in Suffolk, and so the booth, I mean, kind of stole the show, right? Because it's like, what the hell is this thing? All the wings are at different elevations, and stuff. And the only comments we got that were negative was, man, it's the ugliest airplane I've ever seen. but it is, man, no offense. But people thought, like, why didn't I think of that? And it is a little bit that way. It's incredibly simple, but making it work had, that was the challenge.
Have you had any, again, don't say if you don't want to, but have you had any failures in the wing opening mechanism? Because surely that's the kind of an Achilles heel, or the difficult bit, or maybe not. I could be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, the very first drop we did, so the first drops we ever did where the wings were already open, just for risk reduction. The first drop we did where the wings were to spring open, one of them came back. And when it springs open hard. You better get out of the way. If it hits you, it's going to break your ribs, And one of the wings sprung open and didn't lock properly. And you should have seen the Pixhawk trying to fly this. I think it was 750 pounds. Okay, that gross, that particular one that we were flying. It had a bunch of bottled water and just a bunch of nonsense in it. And actually we put some little whiskey bottles that we were going to sign. We fly it in Pendleton. We fly in Pendleton, Oregon, and there's a whiskey company there, Pendleton Whiskey. So we got a little bunch of whiskey bottles and we put it in there. And so, yeah, the poor thing, so 3 wings were great, and then 1 wing was sort of 45 degrees, towards being locked, and it flew for a while, and then finally it got in a spin and stalled, and so it hits the ground, and we run over to it, and the whole thing smelled like alcohol, and it was just it was like some DUI crash scene or something. We like that. Where's the pilot? Where's the pilot? He's obviously been drinking.
So I'm guessing from onboard power, then you're only powering obviously the servos or the motors for the control of the surfaces and the flight controller. So the battery wise, it's just that.
There it is it?
Yeah, we don't use lithium ion on this airplane. Yeah, they don't want it in the C-130 and stuff. So we just use this. It's a UPS, it's a sealed lead acid, Power Sonic. Yeah. 14. I think this 14 amp hour. So that can handle the servo hit. So we use they're pretty strong servos, and so if all 4 are moving maximum, it can pull, I think, about 12 amps or something like that. That's a spike. That's very transient, but.
So it's only the 4. You got the 4 servos on the wings.
Yeah.
And can it lose one and still be home in time for TM medals? I assume they're digital servos.
We haven't tried it, and I have to say I don't know. I think if the servo froze like in a fully deflected, so we deflect 15 degrees up and down. And if it's fully deflected 15 degrees, I think that's going to be tough. But I think if it's neutral, our flight controls are configured as elevons, and so everything's doing everything. And so, yeah, I think if one's stuck neutral or failed neutral, I think you'd probably have a chance. Especially for the Air Force, because they just want you to crash into the,
I suppose compass calibration on that is a bit of a pig, especially with Ardra because it doesn't make it the easiest thing in the world at the best of times. Spinning that around in that little.
You just fly the Hercules around in circles, then go through loops and rolls.
Yeah.
It'll do that. It'll do that on the way down. It'll auto tune its compass as it goes down. In fact, yeah.
You know what my secret weapon is on this thing is Tridge. So
yes.
Yeah.
So this now you never heard of Tridge. So this
never heard of him. No. Who is she?
Yeah.
Doctor. You can call him Doctor. So
yeah.
So we actually fly this with a Raspberry Pi connected to the Pixhawk Cube. Okay. And that Raspberry Pi talks to a Verizon 4G phone modem that we have on board each aircraft. And so all the telemetry and everything's getting streamed to Australia real time anytime we fly Silent Arrow. So yeah, that's Tridge is my co-pilot.
That is a secret weapon. That is a secret weapon in your back pocket. Tridge. What a legend. And he probably retuning the thing on the way down as well. He probably, yeah.
I was going to say, you don't want to auto-tune that. You'll only get one shot on auto-tune on that, aren't you?
That's
So,
I reckon auto-tune would handle that.
Yeah, you'd have to fly circle though, so
yeah.
there's risk.
Yeah.
Risk in flying circles.
So you get over the top of your landing area, you barb a pole down, you're getting your wind assessments, and then it turns into wind to make its final arrival. What sort of area does the soldier have to have available for that?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. We've seen it land and slide around 350 feet, which is pretty far. But so we're looking at putting like little hooks on the underside of it, to sort of land and kind of dig in. But it really depends on the surface. So if it's paved, this thing's going to slide a long way.
Yeah.
But if it's whatever you would probably be doing, some dirt, desert surface or anything like that, then it's going to get stopped. And we're actually developing a flotation kit for Navy resupply. And so that would be a nice, you can milk the landing, and then once you hit, you're stopped.
So are you using the black cube, the blue cube on this? I'm guessing there's probably no requirements for the blue in these ones specifically.
Yeah, it's everything we've flown to date is black. Our very first customers are overseas, so we've just now brought on SOCOM and the Army and Air Force, and no one's really saying that, hey, this has to be made all in the USA. So we just fly a Pixhawk cube off the shelf. To be honest with you, they're so good. They're so robust and reliable, and that's it.
Above and beyond saying, so it will glide to land every time, no skid pad, etc. I guess by that, do you mean no prepared area? I guess I don't know. Perhaps you can.
Well, the underneath the bottom surface here is a 1-inch thick. It's a plywood, and that's a requirement from the C-130 airdrop guys. They call it a CDS skid board. It means container delivery system. It's a skid board. So that's what they use now with like the J-pads. They'll use a 1-inch piece of plywood, and they'll stick a jet ski or a boat or whatever they're throwing out the back. It'll be on this 1-inch plywood, and they'll lash everything to that and kick that out. So the Silent Arrow basically, they view it as a CDS bundle. So when they push it out of C-130, it has its own 1-inch plywood skid board on the bottom. And yeah, it's got a fiberglass nose cone here that covers the autopilot and everything. And when it lands, it's flared, and then it kind of settles down and just slides.
Are you using any of the sensors for the ground detection or anything like that? Are you using any downward sensors for that?
Yeah, we use a lightware LiDAR.
Okay, yeah, another one.
Yeah. So that's it. We make our own wiring harnesses, and so we wire in the lightware. So I think it's a 120 meter LiDAR. So it starts making sense around 100 meters, and we start seeing good data, and then
it starts suggesting its approach accordingly. Yeah, we use those. Yeah.
It's right here. Yeah, it's
definitely worth going and finding one of those. I guess you just don't want to be wherever
they
it is
to be. Yeah.
A balance, a trade-off, isn't it? Is it really worth it? Maybe not. Wow. So would they again, you might not want to answer this, but would they jump on all the gear just to make sure the other team didn't get all the gear? Would you stamp on it all and destroy it? If it wasn't destroyed in the arrival?
What would you do? What's the question?
Well, a stamp on the, well, otherwise they've got a LiDAR and they've got a cube black. Hey, happy days.
It needs a self-destruct sequence in the front once the payload's removed.
Yeah, we'll talk to Philip about having a little hand grenade in there.
But again,
the bad guys
are they utterly destroyed, or would you just not trust them?
I suppose from this point of view, you wouldn't want to trust the sensors again after the impact, would you? That's the problem.
No, I wouldn't trust them again. We have some. We have a pile of them. I don't know what to do with them. It's heartbreak, really. I mean, to have all these cubes laying around, and the LiDARs are, I don't. They're over $200. So you got them sitting there, and you wonder, can I use this again or not? But we're going to make
Yep.
thousands of these things. So it's, you just can't think that way,
Do you have to have your registration number on a sticker on the side or in the battery compartment?
Yeah, absolutely we do. Yeah, it's so Silent Arrow. So we have 3 FAA COAs that we fly under, and Silent Arrow has a tail number. In fact, this one is November 23 FA for Silent Arrow, November 23 Silent Arrow Sierra Alpha. So yeah, it's obviously everything we do is legal, and so we fly this in the national airspace, and now with the Air Force we're flying a restricted airspace, and it's got a tail number and it's a regular airplane. And
it's BV loss?
No, we're doing everything line of sight still. Yeah,
you're still using the helicopter?
Yeah, we're everything we've done so far has been from a Huey, and it's just right over there. You can see it, And so we have 2 observers, and then I can see it as the pilot in command, and I'm a Part 107 pilot as well. But we're relying on the UK Ministry of Defence to certify it for the European markets, and then the US, the SOCOM is certifying it for us, and then obviously mostly we wouldn't sell this to a civilian, right? So it would be used by a government, Are
you going to be testing on Salisbury plane or at Aberporth? Do you know in the UK?
What is it?
Do you know which test ground you'll be using in the UK? Because the one at Aberporth, that's near Ian's house. So we'd go and take you some. I've forgotten what's that.
And Pendine. We got the missile test track down at Pendine. That's full. Okay. That's fun. That place. Yeah, that's Quintec as well.
I'll be back soon. We should get together. Next time I come to London to see the Mel Group about manufacturing, I'll come see you guys. That'd be good. He's
on the west coast of Wales. It takes about 15 weeks to get out there. And,
I've been there. They have terrible wine. I don't know what you're thinking, but
wine. We don't do wine. Beer.
Any wine made from leeks has got to be terrible.
I'm Welsh. We don't do wine.
There are wineries in Wales. Look it up.
That's why it's bad.
I know.
Exciting times. So then, are you hinting that the UK military's taking some on board? Then, obviously, with your UK connection.
Yeah, that's part of the agreement with the Mel Group. Is there are European contract manufacturer, but they're also the distributor for the UK MOD, and so there's a lot of discussions going on there. Yeah.
Cool.
And to the sliding out part, is it a width that goes? Because I think the Hercules and other aircraft do have rollers on the back of them. Yep. Some of them. So is the right width to make it down those rollers?
That's a great question. Yes, it is, but it's almost too narrow. It's right on the edge, and so we are looking at that. We might have a piece of plastic, a slippery plastic, that it sits on over the rollers, and then it goes out, but the plastic stays. It's okay, but it's only 2 feet wide, and so it barely covers 2 rollers.
Yeah, I've fallen over on those in the past. That's why I know they're there. So yeah,
I think it's incredible. It's an awesome bit of kit, isn't it?
Well, it's that simple. It isn't a simple idea. Everything that looks easy and obvious never really is it? No. It never really is when it comes down to it. And that's the beauty of simplicity. It really is. It's amazing. And the wider one, how much wider is it going to be? See how much I can get.
It's around 3 feet. It's another foot. Yeah, it'd be about 3 feet by 3 feet by 8 feet.
Then your wing loading is going to go through the roof on that if it's the same system.
Yeah, we're doing an A and a B model. A is the exact same wings on that. The glide ratio goes down to about 6. And we're doing a B, which we haven't finished yet, and that's enhanced wings to kick the glide ratio back up again. So, we'll let you know how that comes out. We're in the CFD on that.
Wow. I want one.
Yeah.
But then I also need a Hercules or a Huey. That's the only downside to that.
I want to be pushed out in one. It could be a new sport. Get seats in it, and he who survives wins.
Yeah, some kind of
air luge. There you go, the air luge thing. Dronebeard saying, are you going to scale up in size?
What is it?
Are you going to scale up in size is a question.
I don't think so. Well, yeah, we're going to the wider one, and it's a few inches longer. But the electric one is a little bit longer. But we're building one for the Air Force Special Forces that's smaller. So I don't see right now going bigger, but the market can decide.
But the special sauce in the electric one surely is the range extension rather than runway to runway.
Yeah,
because if we do runway to runway, that's an aeroplane.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, so it must be the range extension that you're going after.
That's where it came from. Yeah, and the motor we picked is powerful enough to get it off the ground. So yeah, if you do have a runway, then you can use it that way.
And then what about stealth capabilities, or they just don't care? Because you mentioned steel, you mentioned all sorts of other stuff. Doesn't sound like it's stealth ready.
Well, we call it silent arrow, but I just made that up. It's a marketing term. I don't know if it's silent or not.
Good for you.
I love it.
It's around like an arrow, though. But
whistling wardrobe sounds better. Whistling wardrobe, you got to use that one, mate.
Because you couldn't use Broken Arrow because that was a film, wasn't it? Broken Arrow is the term for missing nukes, isn't it?
Broken Arrow, yeah, John Travolta, right? Yeah. I mean, it is what it is, right? It's made out of plywood, so yeah, it's probably radar, agnostic or, radar transparent. But I mean, if you have the radar turned down to see this, it's turned down pretty small, so you probably see birds and stuff. I
was going to see that steel plate. Better see that steel plate. Otherwise,
there'll just be a steel plate in the air moving. They won't know what it is.
That's exactly it. Yep.
It's like you can see an advertising campaign for IKEA or something with it, can't you? There's wardrobe delivery service. Here they come.
Yeah, all these couriers messing around with drones. We don't want that. We want your Amazon parcel delivered into your garden at 300 miles an hour into its own crater.
It becomes a flat pack.
Yeah.
I love the IKEA where you buy this and it comes with a tiny little Allen wrench and 6,000 screws from China. Put it together.
Absolutely. Well, but you'll be operating in environments where you won't have to worry about remote ID and all that sort of thing, all the other civilian requirements. Is that a good reason to get into the military market? Because you move out outside of all sorts of other things.
Oh yeah. Oh, no doubt. I mean, if we were trying to certify this to sell to civilians to fly in FAA airspace, I mean, what a nightmare. No, yeah, I don't know if you could even do it, because there's no real redundancy built into it, right? I mean, you got a single autopilot, single servos, it's, we're certifying, I mean, it's being built to AS9100 and we're certifying it to military requirements, but it's not designed to fly in over your house.
No parachute in there as a last resort, or no versions with a parachute.
No, a parachute good enough to land this costs more than this.
Okay, yeah, that's a good answer.
So, and return to home is disabled.
What is it?
Return to home has been disabled.
Yeah, you can try.
So from a loss point of view, I'm assuming then that whoever's using it takes on, the military would anyway, but they take on all responsibility for a loss as a result of a failure anyway. From you guys' point of view, you've tested it to the best of your ability. As you say, we've got a single autopilot. Yes, there's multiple IMUs, but there's still only one GPS, one set of overall controls. So at the end of the day, if a failure happens, it happens. There's no more you can really do about it.
No, that's right. I mean, and don't fly it over things you care about, right? And it's really, for the military, it's carrying food and water, and you're trying to make their backpacks lighter so they don't have to carry so much stuff into deployment. And for humanitarian, you're talking about the Bahamas. You're going to carry in food, water, medicine. For firefighters, you're going to carry in survival gear, oxygen bottles, and stuff. And those things are important and critical, but none of those are so expensive and so dear that you can't afford to lose one. If it came out and it crashed for some reason, it's, well, we lost our dinners, throw out another one. It is sort of that mindset.
Does it have, being a canard, does it have much of a ability to flare to slow things down at the end?
Yeah. I mean, the front wing is carrying around 80% of the flight loads, And with the deflections we have, we can deflect around 15 degrees before we get flow separation on the flight control surfaces. So yeah, it's able to pitch up to, I can't remember the stall angle of attack. It's like 16 or 17 degrees or something like that.
Have you considered making this might sound a bit mad, but a cardboard version of this? And the reason I say that was I was at the UK drone show last week, and there was this cardboard flying box, basically, which is designed to deliver, humanitarian things, not large weights as this, but if you're going to take that disposable to the next level and go as far as you can with it, we're talking getting down to cardboard with minimum electronics, lighter weight. Have you considered going down that route?
No, I mean, so yes, we considered it. We used to have foam in this, and we took it out because it's not biodegradable, it's not reusable, it leaves a big mess. This is now just plywood and aluminum, so it can be repurposed. You can cut it up, you can build something else with it. You can fill it with dirt and stack them. It's and if it does a great landing, you could take it and use it again. But honestly, I mean, the flight loads, 2,000 pounds times 2.5, G's of safety margin. The flight loads are astronomical that we're seeing on this, and there's the shaft that the wings pivot on, the shear loads that sees are unbelievable. So it's a real heavy payload, heavyweight airplane.
Yeah. You should put some build instructions for things inside it on a bit of paper for bored soldiers in a hangar. Make yourself a nice rocking chair. Make yourself this.
When you take the wings off and you take the stuff out, what I want to make is a new lid that has like 4 toilet seats on it.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of thing. It's all about community.
It concerns me how much he's thought about that.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you'd plaster it in porn, wouldn't you? That would be the covering. What do the soldiers really want? I mean, come on, let's get down to there's
80s porn. Yeah,
we don't pass judgment.
Well, I mean, there's all manner of resupply in the world. I mean, it doesn't necessarily. Are you worried, Drone Beard saying, are you worried about someone copying you in China?
Well, I mean, that's, so we are pretty patent savvy. We have a lot of patents, and we do have international patents in all the places we care about. So, ultimately, if they're gonna do it, then they're gonna do it, and we'll see how it goes and let them carve out some of the market, and then we'll have to go get them on the patent side of things. But we've done everything we can, and now we're executing. We've set up factories. We have 33 distributors around the world. We have our first contract manufacturer overseas. We manufacture it in the USA. So I think, by the time someone says, let's copy it, we've flooded the market, with the original.
It's not the market that's really going to drive towards purchasing imported either. As you say, the kind of customers you're dealing with are going to be very much looking at the kind of company you are versus the other options.
Yeah, well, we're a legitimate government supplier, and so you have to have quality control, quality standards. Again, this is AS9100, UK DAOS. You can't just come in and make one that looks like it. So
very cool.
Yeah, this overnight success has taken probably 4+ years, 5 years, I think.
Like everyone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I'm sick of it.
So many overnight successes in the world, isn't there? So many. Yeah. And it was purely, I'm asking you again, it was purely that contract that you saw and thought, well, that's nuts. I want to try and do that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
So do you spend your life looking for requirements for stuff that look a bit nuts, and then you think, well, I'll go at that?
No, they find me.
Find you.
That's what reputation precedes you does.
Yeah. I sit in my shop and nonsense finds me.
That's fantastic. Well, must make your life very interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And what does your wife think about all this one then?
Yeah, I mean, she's great. She's a marine biologist, so she comes to the shop and helps out sometimes. But we've got a house full of fish, don't we?
I got a freezer full. Is that the same?
No.
I see. I see. Wow, that's interesting stuff. So, shall we move? Look, let's move on. I don't know if you're busy, Chip. You're very welcome to stay. But I know you're a busy man. We were going to talk about.
I gotta finish. Pack it up.
Good show. Well, remote ID, that's the big thing this week, isn't it? I welcome it. I think it's a fantastic idea. DJI have demonstrated it for. Oh, cheers, Chip. Oh, he's a good man. But I welcome it. What a great job DJI has done showing us all that remote ID stuff. And well, I can't wait to use it. It's fantastic.
It's been a controversial old week, isn't it, to say the least, on this. I don't know. Do you want to start ranting, Bruce, or shall I start?
You've confused me with somebody else. It is interesting, isn't it? Because this whole thing, I saw a whole lot of stuff on remote ID over the week, but the whole thing is it's going to have your registration number, your flyer ID, or whatever it is, or your whatever ID, and then your coordinates and your altitude and possibly the position of the pilot. But I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute. All this means is that now I can get someone's flyer ID remotely without having to actually look at their model or their craft. And then I can put that number into whatever craft I happen to have, and they'll get the blame for everything. This whole thing is, it's like number plates on cars. If you want to steal a car, we'll swap the plates. Or if you're going to do a bank job, put fake plates on. This is not going to affect the law-abiding people. It's only going to. It's not going to affect the bad actors. It's only going to affect law-abiding people. We're just creating clutter and a massive amount of data that's going to be ignored or whatever. And then there's the privacy implications. If you're flying quite legally and legitimately, do you really want people who have no business knowing who you are or what you do, where you are or whatever, getting their phones out and seeing all that information available to you? Where's your privacy? It's like there's so many people have come up with a solution to a problem that doesn't exist.
It's interesting because there are two facets to this, and I tried to do a bit on that in the week because there is a huge amount of confusion. People are still not fully getting. You got to look at this from a US point of view and a Europe, because they are, whilst they're heading in the same way, one is in place and is happening, and one is currently heading towards being finalized. Now, within the EU, this is done and dusted. There's no argument on this. This comes into effect on the 1st of July 2020, and it will be required on pretty much any ready-to-fly drone over 250 grams, and that will include the pilot's location. Now, in the US, things are a little bit different because the specification hasn't been fully set yet. Within the ASTM specification is the ability to transmit the pilot location. However, that's been left down to the individual government to decide if they're going to implement that or not. So within the US, that hasn't actually been determined as of today. But in the Europe, that's happening. Every aircraft sold after every aircraft sold after 2022, technically, that's when the final date for this to come in on models. But the law comes into effect from July 2020. And people are in arms, and the privacy aspect is interesting because we have GPDR in Europe, and interested throughout all this documentation, there's no mention of privacy with regards to pilots at all. And I don't really care about it transmitting my ID. I don't really care too much about the serial number, because if I cared about that, I would just not register it in the first place, to me, if that was ever bothering me. But there is this whole transmitting the pilot's location, because if you're a commercial operator or you're a normal operator, you've set yourself up in an area which you've secured, you have your boundaries in place, and you're going to give the public the ability to come and find you. And this is going to be the public. This is a standard that is open and accessible on any mobile device. By the end of probably this year, by the middle of next year, by the end of next year, there'll probably be 100 apps on the Apple iStore which says drone ID, and you'll be able to download the app and go, oh, look at whoever's flying around me. So this isn't going to be layered. There isn't going to be different versions of it to allow different access. There will be a second layered version in the US and Europe, but that's more around the specific category of use, and that is more around authenticating the user for beyond visual line of sight and allowing them to fly within those kind of systems. However, within the basic system, anyone will have the ability to see that information that's transmitted, and that's really where the concern is. DJI took quite a bit of crap on this week, actually.
They did. Yeah, they didn't deserve it.
No, it was unfair, and I think, look, they showed their vision of what this would look like, and to be fair, they're not the first. Intel have a website showing this in use. They've had it for ages. This is all there. DJI are the first to go out there and go, this is what we would expect it to look like. And it was quite interesting to watch everyone say, this is the last DJI product I'm going to buy. You're trying to go, hold on a minute. Everything you buy, and that will include the Skydio. You know, I've seen a lot of comments about Skydio. For that to be sold in Europe from next year, that will have to have this specification. There's no getting out of it.
So what about home builds? What about stuff you build yourself?
Now, in Europe, it's slightly different. Right, I've looked at this tonight specifically because there is a grey area. Now, home builds do not require it if they fall into a different category, but you will be limited where you can fly compared to the ready-to-fly ones. And really, the limitation isn't that much more than what we've got today. The interesting thing around the new EU rules is they actually allow you to move closer to people, fly closer to people than the current rules generally allow. So with a self-built drone, for instance, there isn't a requirement. It will fall under class 4, which is under 25 kilos, but you will only be able to fly it where there is no possibility of it flying over people, and it will not be anywhere near congested area, basically. So there's still a possibility for it.
So then where do you draw the line between what has been home built and what has been commercially made? If DJI start selling the kit set Mavic, where you can buy all the pieces and put it together, is that a home build or is it a commercial product? There's a bit of grey area there, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. You know, you almost go back, if you went back to the 450 flame wheel territory where you had the NASA, the 450 flame wheel, you know, that was as close to being a ready to fly drone as there was. You could buy the little kit which had everything you in, build it up, and it was ready to go short of a camera. That potentially is a grey area. There isn't a definition of what is home built. I'll just mention about FPV. Again, this is above 250 grams. So anything below 250 grams won't be affected. And again, home built. So FPV would not be affected by this. Neither would most fixed wing aircraft within the EU, as long as the flight control isn't an autopilot and it is purely stabilization, as long as it doesn't have the ability to fully autonomously fly.
Well, that's going to be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is going to be.
How does the officer on the block know if this has got an autopilot or a stabilization system? How's he going to determine? Because the trouble is, the effectiveness of any of these regulations boils down to how easily they're going to be enforced. And if you cannot easily enforce a regulation, then it's open to abuse, and people will take the easy route and say, the cops aren't carrying scales, they're not carrying technology to determine whether this is an autopilot or a flight stabilizer. So we just do what we want to do anyway, in which case the regulations become an exercise in futility.
Yeah, and technically the autopilot and stabilizer is the same unit. It's just a flight mode. You know, you just take autopilot, beta flight, any of them. At the end of the day, you're either choosing one of three. So today it's a stabilizer, tomorrow it's an autopilot. Again, if you built it yourself, it would fall under that category. Within the EU, and I can't comment on the USA because the regs still have not really been published. Within the EU, this is very much aimed at off-the-shelf COTS, as we always, consumer off-the-shelf drones. That's what it would be mostly aimed at, and that's the market they're pushing for. But within the US, none of this is fully agreed, and it's been interesting to see a lot of people saying this won't come in. Oh, this won't be for years. This won't get past legislation. It will, and it will quick as well.
Well, but it just shows yet again how people aren't paying attention.
Yeah,
they're not paying attention. You know, we've been wobbling on again. This is something we've been wobbling on about for 2 years. No one listens to us.
I went back and I discussed most of the issues around this in the original video I put out when the UK put out their consultation on drones in the UK around laws and everything like that. So yeah, as you say, none of this is new yet. DJI have simply shown. Actually, there was another company who's done another one today. There's been more tests all this week. They're all testing this week. They're all trying to say, look at us. We're all trying to, this is what we want to do. And it's interesting to see people's reactions. And I think it was unfair on DJI. At the end of the day, they are simply trying to comply with what's coming here. And it was interesting to see people's reactions on it as well.
Well, and let's not forget, this has been a big push from some UTMs. That's who started this. It was UTMs, because this is what's required for us to end up with a pay-to-play system. And you can guarantee that the open receivers that will be around and about, we all think smartphones, but when I deploy my series of Raspberry Pis with SDR radios on them all around a town centre, so that the local council knows who to bill for the flight. That's where this is going. That's what the UTM vision was. And we go all the way back round to the 16 euros per flight. It was about 17 or $18 per flight that one particular UTM was after. And they needed this remote ID to make that work. It's all been bundled in safety, security, and make the world a cuddly, lovelier place. But that's not where it came from. It came from lobbying to have remote ID in order to make a pay-to-play system, and that's what we're marching towards, in my opinion. I don't know. What's Bruce's ranty idea on this? You must have a ranty idea.
No, again, you're talking to the wrong person. You're confused. You're totally confused. I just don't think that this whole remote ID thing is at all necessary. We have kids riding scooters around with no number plates on. It is this solution looking for a problem, and it's all this hysteria thing. And I noticed this morning that the BBC's been trawling the AirProx reports again and come up with 2 stories of near misses, one at 7,000 feet or something. And it's like, well, come on, people, let's put everything into some semblance of reality and get everything sorted. Still, we have no deaths from the recreational use of multi-rotor drones. It's like it's a hobby horse that regulators and the media have got onto. And I think it's time we as a community demanded some justification for the restrictions, the restraints, the costs, the hurdles we're having to jump through to do something that's proven to be 100% safe. I mean, I just do not understand this. And I think the trouble is we're all too laid back and, it'll be right, don't worry, you can trust these people. I think we've seen exactly the opposite. These people are just trying to screw this community, this hobby, this industry into the ground for their own reasons. And if we just don't do so, look, imagine what would happen in Hong Kong if the protesters hadn't stood up to the Chinese government saying we want to, be able to, get people back to the mainland to deal with them. They've stood up for their rights. We're not standing up for our rights. We're simply saying, we just need to be nice and talk to the regulators. No, I think we've proven that doesn't work. We need to stand up and say, in the UK, I still believe, don't register. They're not going to have the resources to enforce that. And when this electronic ID comes along, don't play their game, because if you don't do it, they're not going to do anything about it. We've already proven this. They don't have the resources or the technology or the ability or the knowledge to actually check these things in the field. Just tell them to be on their way. And non-compliance, civil disobedience, is the only tool we have against excessive rule of iron fist from the state. If you don't stand up for your rights, you're going to lose them. We don't want to lose them.
No. It's interesting because okay, if we break down as of today, within say, there's no standard out there for doing this. DJI have been doing their version of remote ID for about 3 years now, which is accessible via their Aeroscope system. So for guys who don't know about that, and the basics of this is virtually identical. Aeroscope simply transmits additional packets of data underneath your RC link from your aircraft and your control link back and forth, and this additional packets of data contain various bits of information. Pretty much what is already that's talking about transmitting in Europe. However, only people who have access to that at the moment is people who are able to purchase Aeroscope. And whilst it's not an off-the-shelf product, you've generally got to be a government, an airport, or something like that. And I think for the most part, most people accepted that. There was a bit of noise when it came out, but most people went, well, it's not generally everyone's going to have it, therefore it's not a massive issue. Yes, it can be viewed. There are ways of doing it if you're technical enough to be able to view it. If you've got an SDR and a laptop, there is a way of picking it up, but for the general public, there isn't a way of doing it. Now, obviously, what this will do is bring it out of that closed system and into an open system, which is going to be either Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, most likely Wi-Fi. Everyone seems to be landing on the Wi-Fi protocol, and then any smart device with an app will be able to pick that up, and it will be as simple as open the app and it'll just scan the band and go, there's a drone. Now, as for range, Wi-Fi on most phones is not very good, but when a drone is transmitting in the air, it's going to be 500 meters plus, potentially more in urban areas. You might be able to see aircraft up to 1 kilometer. And then what happens if you set up a station at home and you start logging the data? And there is concerns around that, and where pilot privacy is.
That's exactly what I'll be doing.
yeah. And as I said, it opens a whole host of issues. Now, in Europe, we're done on this. It's happening. End game. There's nothing you can do. It's happening. In the US, this is going to have to move through the policy making process. Everyone will have their opportunity to have their say on the specific parts of it. Hopefully, one of those parts is the transmission of the pilot, and that's the one to try and push back if people are going to have the ability to do so. But in all honesty, because this is coming to Europe, with that included, the ASTM standard is being pushed across the globe as the one to go with. I can see it being the same across the board.
Yeah, well, it's within the express wish of some people. And I see ICAO today have said, so it's got to happen in lower airspace. We really have got to be able to detect all these drones a lot better. And ICAO, I think it was today or yesterday, said, because ADSB is not really up to the job. We've been throwing up for years.
Yeah, it's just amusing that this has been going on for 2 years, and people have we've done this for 4 weeks on here. It started with drone registration. It started with everything, and every week we sit here and say we've known about this for 2 years, and sadly, the majority of the stakeholders in the industry, which is us, they keep using these words, stakeholders in these industries. It's not the manufacturers. It's not the companies making the drones. We are the stakeholders. We're the users. We're the people who buy this equipment. Yet we're not being listened to, unfortunately.
It's even worse because the biggest stakeholder by number is the recreational flyers, and they get the smallest voice. And sure, I can see why you might want to have electronic conspicuity and remote ID on commercially operated drones, because they're going to be operated in areas where that becomes an issue. But little Johnny with his toy drone, he's no. And when it comes to ICAO saying, we've got to have something about the lower airspace, well, we've got solutions. Manned aircraft, 500 and above. Unmanned aircraft, 400 and below. You don't need conspicuity. You don't need ADSB. You don't need a damn thing. You just need pilots to follow the damn rules.
Yeah.
Well, and here we are as we roll into 2020. They've been flipping, I nearly swore there, talking about ADSB since the 90s. We've been talking that 30 years they've had to sort ADSB out, and they're just beginning to roll it out. And here we are. The drone world can see and get out of the way of ADSB traffic with ADSB in, and they're expected to have their own electronic standard, which DJI can roll out for conspicuity. That's happening. Manned aircraft, catch up. Come on, hurry up, catch up. Why, there should be more pressure to say to aviation authorities, if we are going to roll, well, either we roll over and accept this, or civil disobedience, or say, hang on a minute, let's have the same standard. I think you got the catapult out towards an aircraft on the weekend, didn't you, Bruce?
Yeah, we had an interesting situation where we had the airfield was NOTAMed because we had high performance model aircraft, jet aircraft, weighing up to 20 kgs, traveling at up to 200 miles an hour. It's a fairly lethal piece of equipment. So the airfield was NOTAMed, notifying pilots that these things are flying at up to 1,000 feet. And we had a Piper Malibu come through doing a nav run and missed approach and overshoot at probably less than 400 feet over the runway, and they should have been to the side of the runway. and made insufficient radio calls, if any, so that even though we had radios on the ground, we didn't hear it. And at 150 knots, by the time you see that thing, it's already on you. You don't have time to get big heavy jet aircraft out of the sky or off the runway. It was just ridiculous. And that's what we've got. We've got to deal with pilots and manned aviation that think this is our airspace. We can do what the hell we like. And NOTAMs, well, they're for common folk, not for us. What is the point in us using the mechanisms provided for safety, such as NOTAMs, if pilots don't even read the damn things, or if they read them, they choose to ignore the implications that go with those NOTAMs, and they don't undertake good common sense strategies when approaching an uncontrolled airfield where there could be, this kind of activity happening. It's like we are stakeholders, but we don't have a say. We really don't have a say, and we're always, because ultimately, no matter where you live in the world, if there is a collision between a manned aircraft and an unmanned aircraft, the unmanned aircraft will always be culpable, because the bottom line is unmanned aircraft must always give way to manned aircraft, and that's the bottom line. It doesn't matter who's actually at fault. The burden of responsibility will fall on the shoulders of the RPAS operator, because that's the rule that applies.
And most RPAS operators will have the very latest NOTAMs on their tablet or phone that they're flying with. All the aviation data will be there in front of them. So yeah, again, +1 for the unmanned world. We can stay in this whole. It's not a mystery. It's not none of it.
The lunatic thing is, here at our airfield, we have to pay $50 to file a NOTAM, because it has to go through the airfield operator. They charge $50 to file a NOTAM, supposedly to increase safety. Well, if pilots are not going to even read those NOTAMs, why are we wasting our money?
So what's your aviation authority said about this? Because I assume you rang them up immediately.
They're looking into it. Obviously, the pilot says he made radio calls. And interesting enough, he made another pass at exactly the same flight yesterday, and I was out there with the radio, and he made one call 24 kilometers from the airfield. It was barely audible, because we've got a radio on our belt standing on the runway 1 meter above the ground, 24 k away in an aircraft. It's reaching the limits of the range of a handheld radio, and made another call 3 miles out. And apparently he claims that on the day of the incident, he made a call 2 miles out, but at 150 knots, 2 miles is less than 1 minute from the airfield. So when you've got, you can't land something that's flying at 200 miles an hour in under a minute and get out of the way and clear off the runway. So that was insufficient. So I'm making recommendations that in the case of an airfield like ours, which has quite a bit of multiple use, we have drag racing, driver training, model aircraft, all sorts of things, that the safety rules around approaches to that airfield should be changed so that we have a greater margin of safety. They might have to make a call at 5 miles and a call at 3 miles, or they may have to do a compulsory overhead. No nav runs, no missed approaches without.
He just joined straight in. He didn't join overhead. Joined straight in.
No, just came straight in, nav run, and that's the problem we have. But when aircraft do that, they're allowed to do that, but they're supposed to do it on the non-traffic side of the circuit. So don't do it over the runway for obvious reasons, because that poses a threat to manned aviation as well. If someone's taken off in a Piper Cub with no radio, and this thing comes in and he pulls up in front of him, that's how you have mid-air collisions between manned aircraft. So he flew over the runway instead of flying to the side of the runway, which if he'd flown to the side of the runway, it would have been no problem, because the models are flying over the runway and on the circuit side. So, but just again, ignoring the rules, the problem is that the guy flying it is quite a big wig in local aviation circles, so he has a lot of clout. So I don't think anything will come of this. He is a very high profile operator in the country. So I think it'll be a case of, technically there may have been a problem, but we'll just chalk it up to experience, and you guys watch out for them.
So we know that you're a ranty fellow that will get up everyone's nose, but what about the actual? What about the jet flyers? Are they pretty enraged? Are they doing anything about it?
Well, it was actually very lucky. If there had been jets there on the day, I'm pretty sure there could have been a really nasty accident. The NOTAM was for the whole weekend, but the jet guys had gone home after Saturday. So this was Sunday. So we had one model in the air. And because we had a clearance to 1,000 feet, the Malibu flew under the model. So it's kind of just luck that there weren't jet models going up and down the runway at 200 miles an hour. If there had been, I seriously think there could have been potential for a fatality in that situation. Because
do you have Sorry, Bruce. Do you have MORs over there, mandatory occurrence reports?
We've filed an incident report on this one, so it has been logged as an incident report.
Because a couple of this, it's harder for the authority to make those go away. There's been a couple in England where model aircraft and drone operators have reported manned aviators, and it's got to start happening. It's got to work both ways.
Yeah, well, we've also got a system which records radio traffic in the area, so we will get a definitive result as to whether the pilot made the calls and whether, for whatever reason, we didn't hear them. But regardless of that, you can't rely on just one thing, radio calls. You must also have other measures. You must fly in the right vector past the airfield. You must read the NOTAMs and take good safety measures when you know that you're going to be flying into an area with potentially a large amount of RPAS traffic. You don't do a nav run straight through the middle of it. You do an overhead to advise people. So whatever the facts were, we were just lucky that we got away with it. And really, it was just because I saw it as it approached the threshold, and when it was probably no more than 15 seconds from going past us. So all the safety measures, it was only the last one was the one that saved us. But we need to reevaluate what represents reasonable safety in a situation like that. And hopefully the outcome of this will be that there'll be changes to the operational regulations of the airfield. I've been trying to get the airfield operator to install a mandatory overhead join as part of the AIP plate for this airfield. So everyone has to do it, but they've said no, because flight schools want to do touch and goes on cross countries. They don't want to waste fuel doing an overhead. Saving fuel is far more important than safety, because you've seen the footage. We've had planes landing in the middle of drag racing and driver training and things, but safety is secondary to money in this case.
And it's not a towered airport, is it? It's
no.
Well, you've got a tower.
It's uncontrolled. So there's an even greater responsibility on the pilot to make sure it's safe to land. That normally involves doing an overhead to reconnoiter the runway, make sure it's clear of obstructions and safe to land on. But coming in on a long final from 3 miles out is not a safe way to approach an unmanned airfield.
No, it's not. No, as you say, especially if there's something not on the wireless. Oh dear. So what else have we seen this week? Now that was a good run out of the way. What else has happened? Oh, Ian's trying to talk to us.
Yeah, that sub you posted looks a very nice bit of kit, Gary. Your video, your news article on that. Which one is that? That's the autonomous underwater vehicle.
Oh yeah, it did look like a nice bit of kit, didn't it? They were bothering us to post it, so I posted it. So it's not normally our thing, but funny enough, there's been blow all drone related news this week. Really, it really has calmed down, and it's sort of got me thinking today that those that are in it now might win it. There's a few companies bailing. There was one of the FPV people went pop, didn't they, this week? Can't remember which one that was. But I think if you've got a good idea now, as Chip does, and
it's interesting. It's interesting. I can't remember. There's certainly you've got a war brewing in the FPV world. You've obviously got the HDO2s. You've got the Orcas, which are basically landing any second. I know a couple of videos have gone out on that this week. I was watching, and you've got it's quite funny. You had DJI like a month and a half ago was digital. Now we've got the big analog war starting again between one and the other, with DJI being thrown in the mix as well. Other than that, there was a company that stopped selling, but I can't remember who it is.
Onway.
Ah, yeah, that's right. I did see a post.
Let's have a look. Let's see. I think it was them, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously the HDO2s look good. Bruce, did you ever try the HDOs? I didn't manage to try a set.
No, I didn't get a set of those.
No.
It'll be interesting to see how the Orca goes. I watched Joshua Bardwell's videos talking to the Orca guy and everything, and it seems like they've got a product, but is it really going to bite into the fat shark market? And it really is interesting times because we're on the pivot of the digital era, and a lot of people now I think I'm surprised how much kit DJI seems to have sold. Even around here, there's lots of people using it. So that's done really well.
It's even if you listen to JB, he's shocked how many posts he reads of people saying, I'm done on analog, I'm checking out, I'm selling everything, and I'm buying up. It must have scared Fat Shark a little bit more than they probably realized it would, because it has certainly made a lot of people go, yes, it's not quite as good as analog in some aspects, but I don't care because I haven't got 10 people watching behind me all of the time. That doesn't matter. I'm going to put 3 air units on my aircraft and get on with it. And at the end of the day, all most people are doing is flying. And that's all they're doing,
Yeah, I think the analog will still be the domain of the long-range FPV flyers, because it's a bit harder to get more range out of the digital system. So it'll become an increasingly small rather than. But yeah, DJI, if they follow up with a second release, which has addressed some of the issues in the first one, and if they just put an analog receiver in there, I mean, they'd just kill the market.
If they had just done that receiver, I know everyone looked at it, it was like, why? The interesting thing with the Orcas is, I don't know if you got this impression. I watched that same video. Do you know what my one big concern is? Will it ever be finished? Because the way they're talking is, it's got all of this stuff, and you just think they're darting everywhere with it. It's going to have Wi-Fi. It's going to have this. It's going to have this power. You're going to run apps. You're going to connect it to this. And you just think, get it out and get it working properly, and then worry about the other stuff first.
And it's so ugly. I mean, a DJI maybe is ugly, but it was stylishly ugly. But the Orca is like 80s design, flat lines everywhere. You know, it's like a Mazda 323 from 1982.
Yeah.
I still see those here. Yeah.
It's still a war on, you got the war now with the HDOs. The reports are very good. I've seen people say they are very, very good. I'm not dropping 550, 600 quid on a set of analog goggles. I got Dominator HD version 2s, I think, and they do everything I want them to do.
Seen the Sky Zone OLEDs as well?
No, I haven't. It's one I need to have a look at, because the price is a lot better on them, isn't they?
Yeah, I tell you what, I didn't believe that OLEDs would be that much better than LCD. But honestly, those Sky Zones, a lot of the models I had which had crappy CMOS cameras and I never flew them, I've been flying them with the OLEDs, and it's like, whoa, it's so much better. And I've rapidly grown accustomed to the slightly smaller field of view that I like. So it's everything is so much better with OLED, and I'm just hoping they don't burn in and go yellow.
There's no screen door effect, is there? Because that's what gets me on the small Fat Shark screens, is that, especially, it's all right on analog because it's the signal isn't good enough for you to see it, but the Dominator, the HD2s, you chuck a HDMI feed into it and the screen, you can see the lines, the screen door, it's just horrible, and that's where OLED really comes in, isn't it?
I'm going to fly my base edition 912s this weekend, just because I can. It's going to be interesting to go back in time to the plastic lenses and the colourful fringes and the whatever. But they did have a 42-degree field of view, which is kind of good. We've gone a lot smaller since then. I'm going to hand it around people at the club and see what they think about comparing the OLEDs to the original FPV glasses. Interesting comparison.
I've still got my what are they? What were the big ones? The HD. The first big goggle. I did a review on them when they first come out. I forgot what they've called. It's like watching IMAX.
It's like box goggles.
Yeah, the big ones, but I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, I know the ones you mean. Yeah, I know they had a great big bloody box.
Yeah, everyone was saying this is it. This is the best thing since sliced bread. And I've still got them, but again, the field of view is so big, it's ridiculous.
Drone Mate says there's HD1 still going strong. Doesn't notice blurry edges. Well, that's wine he's drinking out there in Wales, and the Headplay was the name he's meant.
Headplay HDs, yes, I've still got them. Not worth a penny now.
Such is the way of this thing. Such is the way. Yeah, DJI may have stolen the march with this digital system, and I think they've stolen the march and pulled the rug from underneath some of these UTM operators, because they might have actually done us a favour by pointing out you won't need to buy, because the reason America is going slow on this remote ID is because people are trying to sell add-on bits to be the transmitter, to be that radio that we've all got to buy and fit. So in one way, DJI have pulled the rug from underneath that by saying, look, it can already happen on our gear.
The problem with the Wi-Fi based solution is it's small range. ADS-B has got massive range. Yeah. If you're going to use it for UTM, I don't think this system is up to it.
No, it's.
You've already said it. It's simple, isn't it? And as you know, you say above 1,000 feet. I say get them above 2,000 feet. No GA below 2K. Get them up. Get them out of the way. Get them communicating. Get them transmitting with ADS-B in the aircraft. And we can stay out of the way. Simples.
It's interesting. One thing, at some point, because what are we today? The 19th. So in the next week, the Skydios are going to be delivering, I would guess, in the next week or two, because it's the end of November, isn't it? The first patches of them are going out.
Are they coming to Europe yet? Or
Still nothing
America
confirmed. Yeah,
only?
US only, and they're already up to mid next year on batches. So,
wow.
Have you heard anything from the shops in the UK if the registration is killing the sale of models and drones in the lead up to Christmas? I expect it would have an effect.
No one's. Obviously, I got a couple of dealers who I deal with, and it's interesting. None of them are the big box sellers. They don't push a lot of the consumer gear out. They're all generally regarding the heavier, bigger end of the industry. I'm not convinced that many people still know about it. I still read posts every single day on the BMFA of what's this registration all about. Yeah, I still see commercial operators struggling to understand what they're meant to do, and the fact they don't have to register. They have to register. They don't have to take the test. Honestly, I still think 99.9% of drone operators in the UK, users, not commercial operators, normal users, don't even know this exists.
So why would anyone register in the first place? Because most people won't even know they're not registered. But it'll be interesting if the CAA registration system crashes on Christmas Day. What are all these kids going to do with their toys? They can't legally fly them.
Yeah, but to be fair, I think the actual before this, I think the market's in steep decline for as a toy or whatever. I don't think it's.
And the interesting thing Bruce mentioned on the shop is, let's compare this to the TV license. It's not in a shop's interest to tell a user you need to have a license when a mum and child works in, right? It's not in their interest to tell them, because that parent might say, "Hold on a minute, sorry, little Johnny, I'm not sure about this. Let's hold off today. Let's go home and read what this is all about." Shop's not going to tell them. It's not in their interest. Whereas in the UK, if you buy a TV, it's required that the shop takes the details for the TV license at the point of sale. You can't actually buy a TV in the UK without the shop actually registering you for the TV license. So I do wonder if we're going to see drones head that way as well.
It used to be like that here with TV licenses. You had to have a license and everything, and they'd knock on your door and say, "Have you got a television set?" And that ended decades ago because it was basically unenforceable. And I find it interesting that it was basically, a lot of people just didn't bother, right? And so civil disobedience effectively dismantled that licensing structure. It's the only way to deal, as say, with these kind of forced registration systems. So I think that will have to happen in the UK. The other thing we're talking about before the webcast started was that it's going to be harder to get kids interested in this hobby because YouTube is prohibiting us from making kid-friendly videos.
Yes, it's a good point.
And if you don't make enough money from YouTube, they may chop your channel as well.
Well, that's me gone.
So everyone's jumping up and down and saying, "Well, we'll all move to Facebook, or we'll move here, or we'll move there." I can't quite see YouTube's thinking behind all that.
It's a weird one, because obviously for the guys, we probably should explain this a little bit. For the guys who don't have channels, YouTube have just introduced this whole weird thing around, if your content is aimed at children, you now need to mark it as such, and you won't get advertising, you won't get, I don't know, you won't get hunted in the night or whatever they do to us most of the time.
Comments. I think they even take the comments out of the video. So kids watching a video on, getting them excited about model aircraft, they've got a question. Well, that's tough, kid. Go somewhere else.
So wait a minute. Are they removing all advertising of if it's made for children?
No, I think it's going to be basically generic advertising.
I was going to say.
Kids. There's no targeting or anything. So it'll be the whole age range. And of course, they won't know if it's an adult watching or a kid watching. So because the advertising there will be worth a lot less.
Yes, I was going to say, because like I've got young kids, and my kids spend more time on YouTube than I'm comfortable with, and I'm forever confiscating phones. However, if you've ever seen these people playing with toys, the ones who clearly make content for kids, it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to affect them, because they're getting millions upon millions of views every day. Some of these guys, our kids watched something the other day, and I was just, "What's this? Get this off!" And I looked at it, and it had something like 5.8 million views already, and I was just like, "How is that even possible?"
Yeah, a lot of those channels have been complaining because they've, when they took the comments off those videos and things, that also hurt them. But again, if the advertising value of ads on those videos is low, then the YouTube algorithm is not going to promote those videos to the general viewership. So you're not even going to get the traffic. You're going to lose ad revenue and lose views. So it is going to really impact the viability of channels like that. But the thing that annoys me most is if I put a video up and I say, this is not intended for children, and for some reason it goes viral and we have 90% of my viewers are children, then I can face a $43,000 fine, because it's not up to me to decide ultimately, it's up to the FTC to decide whether that was targeting children. And if they say you targeted children with that video because 90% of your views were children, I get a $43,000 fine for tracking children, violating the privacy. But I haven't violated anyone's privacy. I'm not doing the tracking, it's YouTube. I'm getting the blame for YouTube. I'm sorry, but that's unacceptable. How can YouTube sell off the liability like that by giving it FTC $170 million, making its content creators liable for YouTube's infringements? No, that doesn't work for me.
No, it's a weird one. We've had to. Did you have to click the button this week, Bruce, as well, to say my content isn't for children?
All my videos are 18, suitable only for adults.
Yeah, at least they did one button for everyone. That was I was expecting to have to go into every one. But it is concerning, and the weird thing is there is always this thought your channel could be gone tomorrow. And I've seen this around Facebook groups as well, and people don't realize this. This happens regularly on Facebook compared to YouTube, but Facebook groups disappear. If Facebook have enough complaints from random people, they will annihilate a group overnight, and it can take you a year to get it back. And it's just the concern with YouTube is the same. YouTube
is a dangerous place to stick all your eggs, because I saw today also that one content creator had used a piece of video and a piece of music and all his videos from the YouTube audio library. But apparently that piece of music from the YouTube audio library used a sample that was copyrighted, so all that guy's videos have been claimed, despite the fact he was told by YouTube you can use this without fear. Now all his videos have been claimed, so he doesn't make any revenue from them. It must have been an intro or something he used on all his videos. Yeah. So now all his revenues go to the copyright claimant. So his back catalog and all his revenues have disappeared overnight because YouTube got it wrong. I'm sorry, but that is no way to base a business. You can't rely on that. It's terrible. And they're not going to compensate him for it.
No.
Thank goodness this isn't my bread and butter.
It isn't any of it, and it is concerning because you spend a lot of time trying to build these things up. I can only speak from, Bruce has built up, I still say this, one of the most successful YouTube channels with regards to Model RC there is, period. Let's take all the nonsense ones out of it. Bruce built it from the ground up and has been doing it longer than I can remember. Anyway,
it's one of the least unsuccessful ones.
Well, and the rest of us can, do our little bit and try to do what we think is right. But at the end of the day, you would hope that what you've done, if you do it honestly, would stay there. But there is that you could just wake up tomorrow morning to an email from YouTube saying, gone, And
then also you got younger and older children, and I do a little bit of teaching as well. And some 9-year-olds really surprised me with their own YouTube channels, and the school's got 100 iPads. And this one lad said, he said to me the other day, it's on Tuesday it was, he says, can I have a look at all the iPads? I said, what do you want access to all the iPads for? Well, I've got a YouTube channel and I want to like them from each one. I want to like it from each one of them. So it's
good lad.
I know. So you've got to sort of applaud the initiative. He's only 9. You've got to applaud the initiative and stuff like that.
YouTube should be taking responsibility for this age thing. I mean, why don't they make it so that you cannot watch a video unless you have logged into an account, and as part of the account you declare your age, and therefore YouTube knows exactly who is under 13, and then as is they should do, they take the responsibility, not the content creators. But no, YouTube have done this deal where I don't know how they got away with it. I don't know how you can transfer legal liability from the person committing the crime to someone else. It's impossible.
Yeah. So where I was going to go with that, though, is then they'll come and they'll say, well, we watched this, we watched that. Sir, watch this. And some of the things that they're watching on YouTube is like, whoa. And then it opens up all sorts of big conversations that we have to have across today we've been doing online safety, and it is nuts. It is nuts what's going on out there. So I can, but yeah, I can't see how YouTube managed to whistle away their responsibilities. They've got to be held to account a lot more.
I was only thing I was going to say, moving really back to drone news, there hasn't really been a lot other than I was just going to say the Mavic Mivi,
yes, it's a lovely flavour that is.
Overall, it seems people are generally happy, doesn't it? You know, I've not seen too many reports. There's two things people might not be aware of. Number one, that on Android it requires at least Android 6 and 64-bit compatible phone for the app. Now, this partly isn't DJI's fault, actually. The App Store made some changes middle of the year that required all Android apps to now be 64-bit compatible, and it just seems DJI have decided they're not going to write it in 32 and 64. Now, this wouldn't have applied to the old apps because they're already within the store. Because this is a brand new app and a brand new submission, which would mean it would have to comply with the new things. So I've seen a bit of whinging from people saying it doesn't work with my 4-year-old phone. Get a newer phone is probably the right answer for that one. Also, tablets. The app isn't optimized for tablets. You have to use, for instance, an iPad in ×2 screen mode. It's pixel doubling. It's not actually optimized yet for the resolution of the screens.
See, quite a few people have crashed them, and they're moaning that they haven't got any sensors, and that's why they crash.
I'm not sure it's the drone with lack of sense is the problem.
It was interesting, isn't it? How people are suggesting that that they've always had sensors, and so it's an affront to humanity that there's no sensors on them. And then I saw one flyaway one, which was right in the center of a town somewhere. It's like, whoa, what are you doing? 249 grams. So it's not going to cause that much trouble, but common sense doesn't seem to come in the box. Or
I will argue all day long, drones do not fly away anymore.
No, I agree. I regret saying that as I said it. Yeah, I shouldn't have said that.
No, but you are right. People do. I see the post every day. It's flown away, and I would argue to the ends of the earth there is something somewhere they've done which has led to that point now, because they are. It doesn't matter what make it is. None of these things are that bad anymore. They very rarely decide to take off into the sunset. It's just not common these days.
You still had 10% left on the battery. I had loads of time left.
You do, you see. I was out at 4 kilometers and it just stopped working, and I had 50% battery left, and you just went right. So at that point, you have no idea what else was there.
Yeah, I know. And drone droid saying all they'll do is teach children a subject 18 from the current age. Yeah, no, they do all fib about their age, but then clever algorithms can track what they're saying in comments and things like that and quickly work out how old they really are, and that sort of thing. So I think WhatsApp is trying to do that to get loads of youngsters off WhatsApp. It's based on what I suppose that is text-based, so they can read what they've written, etc., etc. Yeah. But it's all a worry. It's all a worry. Is there anything else we're worrying about, gentlemen, at an hour and 36 in? No, there's nothing else we're worried about. All right, I'm going to put the hammer down, so I'm getting tired. So going once, going twice. Dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, thank you very much. I hope you've had a great week. And Chip, I didn't even say goodbye to you nicely. Chip, thank you very much. That was cracking lacking. It's going to be very interesting following what happens with that.
I want one.
Simple.
I want one.
But have you got the Hercules? Well,
no, I just want one on my wall.
They'll be testing them at your place.
I want to convert it into a bed.
I'm converting my fridge into one.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that just tipping it over on its back, Bruce? Just
pushing it out the window.
That's what happens. New Year in Hillbrow in Johannesburg, people hurl fridges off the top. You can't. It's an old New Year's tradition here, hurling appliances out of windows. You can't walk in the streets in Hillbrow underneath the skyscrapers. It's true, that is. So, yeah, we'll put wings on one this year and blame Chip. But all that, yeah. All right, gents. Thanks very much. Viewers, thanks very much. We look forward to seeing you again 2100 GMT next week. We'll see what we can bring out the woodwork. Take care all. Cheers. Bye bye. Second button.